Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon 401.41. Today we're going to talk about sequencing play. There are a number of ways to sequence play, and many times if you're playing with a regular play partner, you want to kind of change things up a bit. So this sequencing play is if you're doing pickup play in the dungeon or you're just beginning with a new whip bottom and you haven't played with this whip bottom very much before. What's a logical way to approach play where you're going to have consistent results and a good scene consistently? My contention is it's almost like a chef with mise en place before he starts a recipe. I'm going to lay out my toys in the sequence that I'm planning on using them during the scene. So I'm going to begin with a warm-up tool, most likely a flogger. I'm going to move up to a galley whip for my next whip. From a galley whip, the next whip for as far as intensity would be a cat, and then a single tail. The single tail I like to throw for a forward figure eight is a snake whip. If you're throwing horizontal, that might be a signal whip. And then the bull whip would be the final whip because it's going to easily deliver the most power in a Whips in the Dungeon scene. So that would be my sequence. But also part of sequencing is realizing that there's a beginning, a build-up, and an ending to every good scene. And so with the beginning, I'm going to have some way of forming a connection. However you form your connection, it might be having your whip catcher kneel, it might be simply putting a collar on them or cuffs on them or restraining them. Sometimes that beginning can be ritualistic. In my instance, I want to have a physical connection with the whip catcher. So I'll put my hand on their chest with permission. I'll have them put their hand on my chest, and then our opposing hands will put on top of each other. So we form an interconnected loop, and I begin by synchronous breathing, where we're both breathing in and out together, and I try to match that with the rhythm of the music that's playing at that particular time of the dungeon. So that always makes a nice beginning for me. So once that connection is made, the next part is to warm up the skin. And I'm going to start with a warm-up toy, whether it be a flogger or a galley whip. It's important to warm up the skin when you're doing whip play because it will provide better energy exchange, and there'll be less chance that you'll mark if your intention is not to mark during a scene. Many whip bottoms, because of their job or circumstances in their life, they want to play but they can't afford to be marked. The way to reduce your chance of marking is with a good warm-up. The goal of the warm-up is to have a nice even pink or red on your target area. So we'll do that with the warm-up whips, and we'll build that intensity. So the next part of a scene would be your build-up. I'm going to start my build-up with the cat. When I'm working with the cat on a 1 to 10 scale, I'm going to work the heart chakra and the root chakra, and I'm going to compare body language between those two chakras to see if I can determine which chakra the whip catcher's processing that energy best through before I move into the single tail. I'll continue that build up with the snake whip with the heart and the root chakra, again observing body language and seeing how they process the single tail best between those areas, so that when I do get to a bullwhip, if I do throw a bullwhip in the scene, by the time I'm to the bullwhip, I know which chakra is processing energy best at that particular moment for that particular whip catcher, and I'm going to probably do most of my focus with the bullwhip on the chakra that's best processing that energy. So then the last part of the scene would be a cool down. In a cool down, we're just going to back down those controlled puffs and go back down into the range that we did when we warmed up 4, 5, 6, and let the scene calm down. Sometimes it's good to end a scene as well by reconnecting that connection that you started with. however that connection might be. Today's key word is check-in.